What's up, guys, and welcome to Gamescript. Looking at a Sunday night matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Chargers. There is a game with a lot of players and no real direction on who might have the best advantage, but I do believe that I found somebody that we can put in the captain, and I'll get into it right after this. Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript, looking at the Los Angeles Chargers versus Cincinnati Bengals. We've got a 47.5-point total with Cincinnati as 1.5-point dogs in this one. It's going to be played in Los Angeles, and talking about a couple of teams, Los Angeles, basically turned around their franchise by hiring one of the Harbaughs as their coach, Jim as their coach. And they are doing really well this season versus Cincinnati, who lost their offensive coordinator to Tennessee. And they've kind of been on the opposite trajectory, but they also had a lot of issues in the offseason with Jamar Chase sitting out, holding out for salary negotiation. They had issues with T. Higgins, with him not being happy with his salary situation. Bengals just don't take care of their players, and their players held out, or they missed a lot of the preseason. And now we're looking at a situation where they're underprepared coming into the season, lost a bunch of games, and now they're dealing with injuries on top of it. And T. Higgins has missed most of the season with a couple of injuries, a quad injury and a hamstring injury. And then Jamar Chase, finally started catching on a couple weeks ago, and he's looked really good for the past few weeks. But now T. Higgins is back. Jamar Chase has actually played better with T. Higgins in the lineup, but he is also expensive, and T. Higgins is the most targeted guy when they're in the lineup together. So going to have a lot to break down in this matchup. Make sure to hit the like button so I can put out a shorter video as soon as possible, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. When you subscribe to the channel, you help me get to 1,200 subscribers. I'm about 40 away from that, so I appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. And you can sign up for the alerts when you subscribe, and that'll let you know, when these videos go up and when the shorts go up. And the shorts usually go up about an hour before lock, and the videos don't really have a set schedule, but when you have the alerts, you know when they're up. So let's get into this matchup. We are looking at Jamar Chase as the highest owned guy in the slate. He is that for a reason. He's had some monster games already this season. 58 DraftKings points last week, 44. Both those games were against Baltimore. He scored 32 against Washington. Other than that, relatively pedestrian. I think we need to play him as a pedestrian guy to get in the players that we want to get in tonight. But, he also works in lineups, obviously. Maybe not in the captain with that price tag. If he puts up a 20-point game with an 18K captain price tag, then you're basically sunk. So let's take a look at some of these other guys. Joe Burrow has been on fire all season, basically. He's had a bunch of 30-point weeks. Joe Burrow, very valuable quarterback this year. Good job if you got him in best ball this offseason. But Joe Burrow's having a great year. If they were winning more games, he'd be an MVP candidate right now. That's J.K. Dobbins. He came back from an Achilles tear. He's had some big moments this year, but it seems like it's wearing down on him. He's had more carries this season than he has for any season his entire career. And it's starting to wear on him, especially coming back from a normally once devastating injury. But Dobbins showing signs of slowing down, and saw it last week. He only had 8.5 DraftKings points against Tennessee, but also Gus Edwards made his return last week, and Gus Edwards is way down here at 3,400. He might have less ownership than J.K. Dobbins. Let's get an idea of that. Let's see, looking at Dobbins, has about 40% ownership, whereas Gus has 19% ownership. So that's going to give us an edge right there. Gus Edwards at that cheap price tag, he's going to be coming in and getting some of that workload because J.K. Dobbins is clearly tired at this point. He had 10 attempts last week. Now with Cincinnati, as far as the points allowed, they've been pretty good against the run, especially versus the compared to the pass. Cincinnati's only allowing 19.9 DraftKings points a game to running backs, but I think that the Chargers are going to be trying to run the ball regardless, and we're going to see Gus Edwards probably get a decent workload at a cheap price tag tonight. So I like Gus Edwards tonight. As far as the matchup for Chase Brown, the Chargers have been giving up about the same amount, that 19 point, just about 20 DraftKings points a game to running backs. So they're both, top 10 in the league as far as defenses versus these running backs. So they're matchups normally to avoid, but in Showdown, it's a different beast. And Sims are showing a lot of Chase Brown, especially in the captain. I don't like him in the captain, but if I'm seeing him that much in the captain, I'm not going to hesitate to, keep him in the flex, even though the matchup's not that great. If we're looking at, let's see, Justin Herbert. Herbert's been running a lot more recently. He's been a top quarterback for the past couple weeks. He's hit just about 20 in 3 weeks in a row, pretty close to 20. He's come alive in the second half of the season. The team's identity has been a running team, especially with Jim Harbaugh's history as a coach, like preferring to run. And he brought on Greg Roman, which was a big indication that, they might take a run-heavy approach this year. But they're getting to a stretch now where they're going to have to throw. They've had pretty easy matchups up until now, or at least versus low-powered offenses. Chiefs was in there, but the Chiefs have not been a high-powered offense this year. And then you see like Tennessee, Cleveland, New Orleans, Arizona, maybe a little bit higher powered, but they were able to hold them to 17 points in that game. They faced off against Denver, which had not started coming around yet. So they've had some pretty easy matchups relative to the rest of the NFL. So tonight will be really their first challenge. And I like Justin Herbert. We'll see some of his upside, I believe, tonight. And he is the cheaper of the two between Herbert and Burrow by 1,300. And Herbert's shown some rushing upside recently. In addition to that, Herbert was struggling with a bad ankle for the beginning part of the season, but he's fully healthy now, and they're starting to design runs for him. So Herbert is looking good. T. Higgins comes back after his second stretch of games, miss stretch of games. He's been good when he's been playing. He had 29 DraftKings points against Baltimore. He had 18 against Cleveland, and he had 14 against the Giants. He's been pretty solid. So, T. Higgins at a cheaper price tag than Jamar Chase is a good-looking pick there. We got Ladd McConkey. McConkey should benefit against this matchup versus the Bengals. The passing defense of the Bengals has been crap all year, and it's led to a bunch of shootouts for the team. And we've seen it, especially with those Baltimore games, going way over their totals. But tonight, the slots, the last 5 weeks, Cincinnati's defended the slot better than the wide positions. But Ladd McConkey, he's basically their wide receiver one, so I wouldn't crop him out of my lineup. Quentin Johnston, guy I like better. Johnson is in a really good matchup, and I'll get into that right before I start building my lineups. But Quentin Johnston is a guy that I like tonight, and I think he is at a good price at $7K. Mike Gesicki, With T. Higgins on the field, Gesicki is getting a lot less, targets and action. With Eric All off the field, that helps him out. We haven't seen Eric All off the field with Gesicki and Higgins on the field together. So we'll see how that pans out tonight. But Gesicki not in as good a situation as we've seen him, without Higgins in the lineup. And Chargers on top of that, only allowing 11 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. Josh Palmer, has a decent matchup as well against the Cincinnati, defense. Not sure what his ownership's going to be, but Josh Palmer is probably a good guy to rotate into our lineups because we want to rotate all these Chargers guys into our lineups. We don't know which one of these guys could potentially pop off against a bad pass defense. Dicker in play. This is a team, with the mentality of get your points, probably not as high risk takers. So, they're going to try to kick field goals when they have the opportunities to. We saw him have a 21-point game, a 12-point game, 10-point game, 12-point game. Kickers are going to be in play tonight because at least on the Chargers side, Chargers got a good defense. And on the Bengals side, they have a worse defense, but their offense isn't going to be as high powered as the Bengals offense. So we could see a lot of kicking situations tonight. Will Dissly is in a good spot. Hayden Hurst has been back the past couple weeks, but it hasn't affected his snap shares. Will Dissly's getting about a 50% snap share, and I look for him to have a decent game tonight. And Chargers are giving up about 15 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, so that's going to set up Dissly to have a decent game. At 5,200, I could see him scoring, maybe 10 DraftKings points, and then possibly getting a touchdown on top of that. McPherson, same thing with Dicker. Chargers and Bengals defenses. I don't hate using either of these because if it ends up in a shootout, then these defenses can have just as much of a role as any player down in this range, like in a potential shootout where you can see a pick six, you get a lot more throwing opportunities, and that gives more interception, pick sixes type of situations. So both defenses are in play. I probably have limited exposure to them, but they're not going to be out of the player pool. Gus Edwards, Tanner Hudson had kind of got a decent game last week with Eric All being out. He kind of took over. Gesicki, some of the work Gesicki was getting. Gesicki had a muted week last week, but Tanner Hudson ended up with 7 targets, 6 receptions, and scored a touchdown. He got 16 DraftKings points that game. Gus Edwards, spoke about him earlier. I like him. Josephus, forget about him pretty much once Higgins is back in. We got he is getting end zone targets though. So Josephus not completely out of the player pool, but this is like the Tyler Boyd situation. They're barely going to target those wide receiver threes in this offense. If we're lucky, we get a touchdown out of him, but that might not even be enough to get him in the optimal. Sample's another one of these tight ends who's going to be benefiting from All being gone. He had 11 DraftKings points a couple weeks ago. Tight ends have been used pretty heavily in this offense with Higgins out, but with Higgins back in, we could be looking at a different situation. Burton, he's a guy that they wanted to get more work to. These past couple weeks, though, 5 targets, only 1 reception, 3 targets, only 1 reception. He missed a practice in week 9, and it ended up getting him benched when they were going to use him heavily in the game plan. And, the guy just has not performed. But the fact that they're actively trying to get him involved, that Baltimore game, he had 5 targets after that incident. So, he hasn't been cut out of the game plan. We could see him come to life at any time, but with Higgins back in the lineup, these ancillary receivers are not going to get as much opportunity. Kimani Vidal will likely be a scratch tonight. Herbert is a guy that is going to be taking away some of the workload from Chase Brown with Zach Moss out. Chase Brown isn't built to be a workhorse back. And, we could see it tonight. We could see Herbert take some of that load off of him. So at 2,400, he's definitely one of those rotational guys that we can get into our lineups. Hassan Haskins got a goal line carry last week, scored a touchdown with it. But I like Gus Edwards to kind of take over now that he is in his second week back. Hayden Hurst, talked about him. He's kind of disappeared this year. I liked him a lot in the preseason, but he has just not delivered. DJ Chark could be interesting tonight against this pass defense. He only had one snap last week, so he really didn't get much run. They like their receivers that they have with Johnson and Ladd McConkey and I believe Aguilar, or no, Rhaegar. Rhaegar is the third one. Rhaegar being cheaper than DJ Chark is interesting, though, because Rhaegar, one target last week, 2 targets the week before that. He could be one of those sneaky guys that we can plug in when we need that salary relief. So keep Rhaegar in your lineups or in your player pools this week. I'd keep Chark in there too. These guys are going to be a crapshoot. We don't know what the usage is going to be for them. The coaches, when asked about DJ Chark, basically talked about, well, we're working him in. Like he had practices and he, went through the drills. So it wasn't a very ringing endorsement of DJ Chark, but we never know how much of that's going to be gamesmanship. Maybe they're planning to use him a decent amount, but we're not going to know until we see it. So I don't hate taking chances on Chark. I don't hate taking chances on Rhaegar, especially when we need the salary. So let's build a chalky lineup. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes so we can put out a shorter video later on. Subscribe to the channel. Help me get to 1,200 subscribers so that I can get there before the end of Monday. I wanted to get there before the end of week 11, and I'm only 40 away from that, so I appreciate the help with that. You want to do that to get the alerts anyways. So let's go into a more chalky lineup. I could see, potentially Chase, being a heavily owned captain. People would probably stack him with Burrow. Herbert makes a lot of sense. I know that Brown is going to be popular. That's going to leave us with 1,200 per guy. If we go in this direction, this is one where it makes sense to get Rhaegar in there. Leaves us with 1,800. Puts us in that Chark range too. I probably don't want to go necessarily this direction. If we wanted to go and replace Herbert with, let's say, McConkey, this is where it gets difficult when you have Chase in the captain. It's going to be limiting. Let's put McConkey in there instead. It's going to leave us with 3K at least. And at that point, you got options like Josephus, Burton, Khalil Herbert, guys like that. I don't like this build at all. Let's see. Let's put Burrow in the captain instead, and get Chase in there. And we got Brown in there too. I don't mind double stack, using that as the double stack there. 3,700. That leaves you with the Gus Edwards option, which I like. Josephus again, like Sample, Burton, guys like that who would fit too with a Burrow captain. So let's go into a different type of build. Let's put McConkey in there. And McConkey's not my favorite captain. I'll get into that in a minute. McConkey, I'm going to put Burrow. Let's put Herbert. I think a lot of guys are going to want both quarterbacks. And Sims are putting Chase in. Let's go down, look for a cheap guy. Again, Rhaegar is probably the best cheap guy. Leaves us with 5,100 in that situation. We got options like McPherson, the defenses, Gus Edwards again, guys like that. So now let's get into my favorite captain. And the reason why I like Quentin Johnston as my captain is because he's going against Cam Taylor-Britt tonight. The way that Johnson aligns in the formation, he aligns mainly on the left side for over 60% of his alignment. And Britt aligns on the opposite side. So they're going to be facing for 75% of his alignment. So he's going to be basically facing Cam Taylor-Britt throughout the entire game. And Cam Taylor-Britt is one of the worst corners in the league. He has been extremely vulnerable recently. He's a big reason why, a big part of the reason why Cincinnati sucks against the wide receivers this year. So I like Johnson as my captain, and I'm going to pair him with Herbert, and I'm going to get Gus Edwards in there too. So I got these three guys in here. I want to get Brown in there because again, like the Sims are pushing Brown pretty heavily, so I'm not going to fight that. And I think in this at this point you can get Higgins in there and fill it out with maybe McConkey or something like that. You could get Chase in there and go down here to get McPherson or the Chargers or Bengals defense. You got options. Quentin Johnston just opens up so many opportunities for us. If we wanted to go Burrow, then we have options like Gesicki, if you like Gesicki tonight. Palmer, Dicker, the kicker, Disley with that good matchup. And, just a bunch of guys at that point. We're going 4-2, which I don't hate. Let's see what the breakdown of the 4-2 Chargers is going to be popular tonight, about 30% of the lineups. But I do think that Quentin Johnston should have very low captain ownership tonight. But he has the best matchup, in my opinion, by far. So make sure to hit that like button. Get me to 30 likes so I can put out the shorter video. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. Help me get to that 1,200 subscriber mark. And I can continue doing these videos. And that's it for now. I will see you guys later on with the Monday night Showdown game script. So take care.